Okay, let's unpack this. You've probably seen the viral videos, heard the amazing stories, maybe even met a parrot who sounds, well, eerily like your neighbor's doorbell. Or maybe even, your Aunt Mildred.
Yeah, it's absolutely captivating, isn't it?
It really is. These incredible feathered creatures, they just seem to, out of nowhere, mimic human speech,
Yeah.
complex songs, even like the sounds of our phones.
Uh-huh.
But it feels like more than just mimicry, right? How, and maybe the bigger question is, why do they do it?
Right.
This deep dive isn't just about some clever trick. It feels like a really complex thing, something that makes us question, intelligence and communication itself.
And what's fascinating here, as you say, is that a parrot's ability to talk, it goes way beyond what most people probably imagine.
Yeah.
Our sources, they make it really clear it's not just a party trick. It's the result of this complex interplay of biological mechanics, pretty advanced cognitive abilities, and these intricate social behaviors.
So a bit of everything coming together.
Exactly. We're going to try and explore all those angles, give you a really comprehensive view of how something that looks kind of simple on the surface is actually incredibly nuanced underneath.
That's exactly what we're aiming for. So our mission for you today is really to pull out the most important bits of knowledge from the articles, the research, our notes, basically demystify this whole parrot talking thing.
A shortcut to getting the real picture.
Yeah, consider this your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed about these amazing creatures. So let's start with the physical how. When we hear a parrot speak, it can sound so much like us. Are they using vocal cords like we do? How can they physically make such, diverse and complex sounds?
That's a great place to start, actually, because it right away shows how unique their biology is.
Okay.
Unlike us mammals, parrots don't have vocal cords in the same way. Their amazing ability to make this huge range of sounds comes down to a special vocal organ. It's called the syrinx.
The syrinx.
Yeah. You can think of it as their version of our larynx, our voice box.
Right.
But it's exceptionally developed in parrots. And it sits lower down in their chest, near where the trachea splits.
So not just an airbird larynx, but like a supercharged version, specifically for complex sounds?
Precisely. That's a good way to put it. The syrinx works by vibrating air. Yeah, much like our larynx does.
Okay.
But what really makes it different is how sophisticated it is anatomically. It's surrounded by several pairs of muscles.
Muscles.
Yeah, multiple muscle groups. And they allow for incredibly fine-tuned and, crucially, independent control over the sound on each side.
Independent control.
Exactly. So they can manipulate pitch, tone, even the sort of texture or timbre of the sound with amazing precision. We're not just talking simple calls here. It's about producing really complex, distinct sequences of sounds. Our sources talk about how a parrot can mimic a human voice, sure, but also replicate something super specific like a particular phone ringtone or a squeaky door almost perfectly. That level of control, it just speaks volumes about how flexible that syrinx is.
That's just astonishing control for what sounds like a pretty small organ. But okay, making the sound is one thing. Using those sounds meaningfully, in context, that's totally different. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah,
It can't just be the syrinx, right? Their brains must be playing a massive part.
absolutely. You've nailed the critical next step. The talking ability is, it's completely tied to their advanced cognitive capacities.
Okay.
Researchers have found this specific, highly developed area in the parrot brain. It's often called the song system, and it's fundamental for learning vocals, for mimicry.
The song system, that sounds really specialized, almost like a dedicated language center for them.
It pretty much is. Within this system, there are specific spots, nuclei like the HVC and RA, that are vital for how parrots learn sounds, store them, and then reproduce them.
HVC and RA, okay.
And here's the really groundbreaking part, maybe the most mind-blowing bit. These areas seem to function in ways that are strikingly similar to our own Broca's and Wernicke's areas.
Wait, the parts of our brain crucial for language?
Exactly. The very centers we use for producing and understanding language, there's a functional parallel there in the parrot brain.
So we're talking about a neurological setup in a parrot's brain that echoes our human language centers. That's way beyond simple mimicry, isn't it?
It really pushes the boundaries.
What does this suggest about why they're vocalizing? Is it actual understanding or just incredibly sophisticated mimicry?
Well, the real breakthrough, and our sources really back this up, isn't just that parrots can say words. It's that some can demonstrably understand them and use them contextually.
Like, really know what they're saying.
Yeah, imagine a bird not just repeating cracker, but actually asking for a cracker when it wants one, or telling you the difference between a red block and a green block.
Wow.
And the classic example here, the one that really shook up the scientific community, is Alex, the African gray parrot.
Alex, yes. Heard so much about him.
He learned over 100 words, but crucially, he used them meaningfully, identifying objects, colors, shapes, consistently using the right words. It's not just parroting.
Yeah.
It shows a level of cognitive grasp that, frankly, forces us to rethink our definitions of animal intelligence.
That takes us to an even bigger question then. So what does all this mean in the grand scheme of things for their evolution? Why would this incredibly sophisticated ability, this complex vocal mimicry or talking, why would that even evolve?
If we connect it to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
like you said, the answer seems pretty clear when you look at how they live. Parrots are intensely social animals.
Right. They live in flocks.
Exactly. Big, complex, tightly knit flocks in the wild. And this social structure, it's likely been a huge driver behind their sophisticated communication skills evolving.
Makes sense.
Their ability to talk or mimic complex sounds probably serves as a really important tool to, strengthen those social bonds and also to manage the complex dynamics within the group.
So maybe using distinct calls for different members of the flock or different situations. It's about knowing who's who in the crowd.
Precisely. Our sources explain they use distinct vocal signals for identifying individuals, for maintaining the social hierarchy, coordinating what the group does, all that stuff.
Okay.
So their tendency to mimic our speech when they live with us, it could actually be like an extension of that natural instinct.
Like they're trying to fit into our flock, our family.
Kind of, yeah. It's this incredibly adaptive way to integrate themselves. And of course, in the wild, they also use sounds for other things like marking territory or attracting mates. It all boils down to communicating effectively in their social world.
What about mimicry itself? As a survival thing, does that play a part out there in the wild?
Oh, it certainly can, yeah. Mimicry isn't just in social glue. It can be a pretty useful survival strategy, too.
How so?
Well, in their natural habitat, they might copy other animal sounds,
Mm.
maybe to confuse a predator,
Hmm.
or to send subtle social messages within their own species that we don't even understand yet. Parrots are natural learners. They pick up sounds from their environment. That's fundamental.
Hmm.
Could be other birds' calls, could be rustling leaves.
Or a phone ringing in our house.
Exactly. They adapt.
Yeah.
In a human home, human speech is often the most dominant, most interesting sound. So they learn it. It's this amazing adaptability.
Yeah.
They store these sounds in their memory and then practice reproducing them. It's very similar, actually, to how young parrots learn their complex calls from their parents. Lots of listening and copying.
That really helps explain how they slot into our homes so well. Okay, let's shift gears a bit then. If this amazing ability evolved for life in the wild flock, how does it actually play out when a parrot becomes part of, well, our human family? How does this mimicry happen in a domestic setting?
Right. So in captivity, they're mostly hearing human speech, right?
Mm.
So quite naturally, that becomes the main soundscape. It's just a logical extension of their mimicry skills to start imitating what they hear most often. And there's a really powerful learning motivation involved, too. Parrots often seem to see mimicking us as a way to get social rewards.
Like getting attention. Or a treat.
Exactly. Our reactions, praising them, giving them attention, maybe a favorite food that really reinforces the behavior. Creates a strong feedback loop.
So we're kind of, maybe without even realizing it, training them to talk just by being excited when they make sounds like ours.
We absolutely are, yeah. And like we talked about with Alex, it often goes way beyond just repeating sounds.
Right, the meaning part.
He didn't just mimic, he learned what words meant and used them in specific contexts. Identifying things, asking for things. That shows a level of understanding and intention that's, well, it's deeply tied to that social interaction with humans.
So the quality of that human interaction, how consistent it is, that sounds absolutely crucial. Not just for learning sounds, but maybe even for grasping meaning.
Without a doubt. The bond they form with their humans really influences their talking ability and maybe even the depth of their understanding. The more they hear human speech, especially if it's interactive, talking to them, not just at them,
Yeah.
the more encouraged they are to learn and mimic. The training process, as the research describes it, is often about repetition and positive reinforcement.
Like getting a reward for saying the right word.
Exactly. Food, praise, attention. It strengthens those connections in the brain, reinforces the behavior. Talking really becomes a core part of their relationship with us, almost like a shared language in a way.
And I guess the environment itself, the actual house, must shape what they end up mimicking too.
Oh, absolutely. Hugely. The specific sounds in their living space directly influence what they copy.
Right, like the TV or the microwave beep.
Yeah, exactly. If it's a busy house, they might pick up bits of TV shows, phone rings, doorbells, you name it. An environment that's rich in sounds, varied sounds, music, conversation, what researchers call an enriched auditory environment.
Okay.
That tends to encourage them to learn a wider range of words and sounds, more stuff to copy. And actually, interestingly, our sources also mention that sometimes parrots might mimic more if they're stressed or feeling ignored. It's a really effective way to get attention after all.
That's a really interesting point. It makes you wonder, are all parrots basically the same when it comes to talking? Or are some species just naturally better mimics?
That's a really common question. And yeah, there's definitely a big difference between species.
Okay.
Our sources are pretty clear that African gray parrots, like Alex, they're really top-tier talkers, among the best in the bird world. They show this amazing capacity, not just to mimic, but like we said, to learn and use words meaningfully.
So African grays are kind of the superstars of parrot talking.
You could definitely say that, yeah. And then you have others, like Amazon parrots, the blue-fronted Amazon, for instance. They're also known for being really good talkers, often with very clear, articulate speech. People say they have great pronunciation. But then on the other end, you have smaller species, like budgerigar's budgies. They can talk, absolutely, and some learn quite a few words, but generally their vocabulary is more limited, and their speech might not be quite as distinct as the larger parrots.
So a whole spectrum of ability. The insights we've covered are incredible, but a lot of this understanding comes from specific scientific work, right? What have those big studies, especially with parrots like Alex, really shown us about how deep this ability goes?
Dr. Irene Pepperberg's work with Alex is it's absolutely central to this whole field. Her decades of research were groundbreaking.
Yeah.
She fundamentally showed that parrots could do cognitively complex tasks that went way beyond just repeating sounds. Alex's achievements were stunning. Over 100 words, yeah, but the key was he could identify objects, colors, shapes, and use those words appropriately, even in new situations.
So it wasn't just like Polly want a cracker. It was more like he knew what red meant and could point to the red thing.
Exactly. He wasn't just saying green. He'd say green if you asked him the color of a green block. And if the block wasn't green, he wouldn't say it. Or he might even say none if asked how many red blocks there were when there weren't any. That's a huge leap.
That is enormous. Way beyond mimicry.
It absolutely is. And this cognitive ability links right back to the neuroscience we touched on, that specialized song system in their brain.
Right, the one similar to our language areas.
Yeah, with its functional similarities to human language regions, it seems to provide the neurological basis for this kind of language learning. It suggests their ability isn't just a neat trick. It's a deep, complex cognitive process that has parallels with how humans acquire language. We're not just teaching them tricks, we're tapping into something innate.
But this raises a really important question, doesn't it? I mean, it's incredibly cool and fascinating for us to interact with talking birds, but what are the wider implications, the ethical side of things, when we think about parrots and their talking?
That's such a crucial point to bring up as we understand more. While their ability to talk is really enjoyable for humans, it definitely raises questions about keeping them in captivity and their overall welfare.
How so?
Well, the very fact they can talk often makes them highly desirable as pets. And for many parrot species, that demand contributes to them being taken from their natural homes, their complex wild habitats, and social groups.
So their amazing, captivating skill can actually sort of inadvertently lead to them being removed from the lives they evolved for.
It can, yeah, and it's something we really need to be conscious of. Plus, our sources really emphasize that teaching parrots to talk, or even just interacting with them in a way that encourages it, it needs huge amounts of patience. And critically, it has to be done using ethical methods.
Right.
Trying to force them to talk or keeping them in stressful, isolated, or just plain boring environments that can actually cause real harm and stress to the bird. It's a reminder, these are highly intelligent, very social animals with complex needs. Interacting with them, especially because of this talking ability, comes with a big responsibility.
This has been just a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah.
It seems so clear now that a parrot's talking ability isn't just one thing. It's this incredible mix of unique biology with that syrinx,
Yeah,
an ancient evolutionary drive tied to social life and survival,
right.
and these really complex social interactions, both with other parrots and in our homes with us humans. It's just so much richer, so much more complicated than simply copying sounds.
Absolutely. And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, really understanding this complexity, it deepens our appreciation for these amazing creatures, doesn't it?
It really does.
But it also underlines our responsibility towards them, their welfare, their ethical treatment, especially when they're under our care. It's really about understanding the nuances of animal intelligence. And as we see today, that's something we're maybe only just starting to truly get our heads around.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If parrots can genuinely learn words, apply them, maybe even understand concepts, what does that really tell us about how they perceive our world? And maybe even more profound, what else might they be capable of communicating if we could just learn to listen better, to understand their own complex calls and sounds beyond just the human words they mimic? It's a pretty deep thought, asking us to maybe rethink the very boundaries of intelligence and communication itself.